My education really started on robots. That was my first film. I think it was the first designer hired specifically for robots. Piper was the main character that I got to design. The really fun thing with Spies was that the whole premise behind it was that we were making a spy movie, straight up spy movie that just happened to have the protagonist get turned into a pigeon and derail this great spy movie.
On this week's episode, we have my friend Michael Knapp, who is an art director and designer who worked at Blue Sky Studios on Ice Age, Robots, Ice Age Dawn of the Dinosaurs, Ice Age Collision Course, Horton Hears a Who, Epic, and Spies in Disguise. He talks all about what the art director does, everything from working with the art department at the very beginning of the process to working with the lighting team towards the end of the process, and how they really push emotion through light, color, and design. It's a super interesting conversation, and I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you so much for being here. Let's get into it. Where are you from originally?
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, right.
It's got, rich arts and music, and, I played in bands there, and it was a great scene when I was there. It's got a really good design and illustration community, and that's where I started because I was an illustrator.
That makes sense.
And came up through there, and then got in animation after New York, but it was completely by accident, not intentional at all.
When you meet somebody for the first time, and they ask you what you do for a living, what do you tell them?
I have to stop and think because I've had a few titles over the years, and it kind of depends on what's most recent in my mind in terms of what I've been doing lately. Mm-hmm. So I say production design consultant, and then just kind of blankly because nobody, because I don't know what it's fairly new to me too. So I say that, but I work in animation, but I'm not an animator. It's always like a qualifier. Yeah. More straightforward answer would be like production designer and. But that also means something different in animation versus live action. So,
and art director and production designer are similar titles, but different jobs too.
Yeah, Blue Sky kind of blurred the lines a little bit because a lot of our shows we didn't have a production designer, so the art director would kind of fill that role too. Oh. But like on the Ice Ages, they were based on Peter Clark's style, so I don't know that he got credit as production. I think Brian McAtee did, who was technically the art director, but Peter Clark was the chief. He designed literally everything that was an environment.
Oh, wow.
Peter DeSev did every character, but everything was based on Peter Clark's shape, language, and style. And so Brian McAtee did more of like color and overall like following the production and doing, the rest of the job, and guiding Peter and shaping everything as a whole. But that's the difference. So, art director tends to be more involved with the crew. Production designer tends to be kind of the overarching architect of the look. But on the Ice Age films, when there wasn't a production designer or a Peter Clark and I had a design team and I was art director, I was sort of serving as the production designer, but just not in name.
Wow.
So I was, the overarching look, but also working with all the teams all the way from art, even with story sometimes.
Yeah.
All the way through
to lighting
and comp, and then post-production as well.
Wow.
And color timing, yeah.
Man, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was a steep learning curve because, I'm just a drawer. I went to school for illustration.
Just a drawer.
I went to school for illustration and, it was about making still images and telling a story in a single image or maybe a short series of images.
Yeah.
But, it's very different than designing dimensional sets. And like if I was working in 2D animation, it would be more close to what I had studied than getting into 3D animation. So it was a lot of changing how I thought about drawing space and having accept that I have to draw perspective and, how you arrange things, not just in flat composition, but how they fit into space. And then once we started getting into stereoscopic films, I even changed how I did that because it behaves differently. So it was just a constant learning process of like how do I fix my bad habits and make them work better for this medium.
What an education too, like being thrown into that, and especially once you started doing you were the art director and you're going through all these departments, like learning what all these departments do.
My education really started on robots when I didn't know anything.
Wow.
And so
was that your first film at Blue
That was
Sky?
my first film. I was I think I was the first designer hired specifically for robots.
Wow.
A lot of some of the guys from Ice Age rolled over onto it, but I was hired. Bill Joyce had, brought me on specifically for robots because I'd done a little bit of work with him like a month prior. And
I love that film so much.
Thanks.
Robots is still one of my favorite movies.
It's not one of my favorite movies to watch, but it is definitely one of my favorite memories of filmmaking because I had no idea what I was doing. And there were so many challenges and problems. And like I would go over to the story department, they'd be grumpy because of all the story changes that were rolling in. And I'd be just looking at what I had to draw next. And I was like, this is amazing. Oh, cool. We have to get more stuff to do. Yeah. And so every day I was just like the annoying chipper kid who was like, just aggravating the grumpy story team because I would hang out with them as much as I would hang out with the design department. And as we got rolling into production, I short attention span. I'd sit and draw, work for 20, 25 minutes, and I'd need to stretch my legs. And I'd just go sit in a modeler's cube, Sean Cusick or somebody, and just sit in his cube and like watch him work and talk and just kind of observe. But then also start to notice how they were looking at our designs or my drawings and how they were interpreting them or misinterpreting them or how the drawing might have misled them on something. So I was kind of seeing oh man, well, what can I do better to, better communicate to them what my intention was and what this should look like. And I started doing that with a lot of different departments. So it was like the set dressers or, the texture artists surfacing, lighters, did I say effects?
And this was even as a designer.
At the beginning. Because I was a film nerd. Like at heart, I was like an animation and film nerd. And I was, any DVD extra I could watch, I would watch. Or if I could find it like late night on PBS and they were showing like, how the model shop at ILM like built the Death Star or the Star Destroyer and they did the motion capture cameras and all that motion tracking. I was into it. And so this was like getting kind of see that in real time and we were all doing it together. And so
cool.
And also I was an illustrator. I wasn't an animator or like an animation worker. I was just an illustrator who got hired onto a job in animation. And so in my mind, like I was soaking all this stuff up before this gig ended.
Yes. Right.
So I was thinking very short term. I didn't sign on full time for like the first 2 years because it just never even occurred to me. John Donkin, he was a producer at the time, caught me in the elevator banks, was like, hey, Mike, do you want to be an employee? Like, benefits, insurance, 401,
Yeah.
I was like, I hadn't even occurred to me because I had been a freelance illustrator for so long.
Yeah.
And that was just never in the cards.
You're like, you'll let me stay here?
Yeah. Yeah. So I said yes. I said yeah, and it was like it was an absurd amount. Like, man, you know how much more 401k I could have had? Like if I had, it was so dumb. But
when you were working on robots, what were some of the things that you got to design?
Well, Piper was the main character that I got to design.
Piper's amazing.
Thanks. She was. Bill Joyce had done a take on her, and it was a little more retro feeling, and a little, they just wanted to like update the feel to something a little bit more modern and a little less like
Jetsons.
Scarecrow or stick figure. No, it was just she had a really slight build in Bill's take.
Oh, gotcha.
And so I was looking at motorcycles and banana seat bicycles, and of course Bill did come up with the idea with like the shower head caps and for the little pigtails, and then just kind of revising her to feel a little bit more of some of the other characters that Greg Couch had designed and to get her to fit in the world and the proportions and everything. And so she was the main lead that I designed. I worked on the crowds a lot and just like riffed on what background robots could look like. And,
that must have been so much fun.
Oh, it was a blast. It was an absolute blast.
Did you look at a lot of like reference of random like washers, dryers, like appliances and kind of?
We went to, I think it was in Pittsburgh when I was visiting my family. I went back and they had like an aluminum show at the Carnegie Museum.
Wow.
And so I got like the book for that and like toured the show and looked at it. So it was all of this industrial design and things that were made of aluminum, motorcycles, watches, water kettles and all kind, over the ages. So it was
Yeah.
like 100 years of aluminum in industrial design. So it was things like that.
Yeah.
And then, so like for robots, we didn't go on location to, the Grand Canyon or Rio. We went to a junkyard in Connecticut and just kind of kicked things around and looked at, studied all the rust and stuff. And then I wandered through and I found basically a graveyard for old radiators, and they were all arranged in rows, and it sort of looked like the projects. And that became the Rusty neighborhood.
Oh, wow.
So the Rusty neighborhood were made of these like tall tower radiators, and that we kind of arranged in the same way and had a lot of the same wear and tear, and so it's you take inspiration for things like that.
Yeah.
There was this weird water pump, this green water pump that just looked like a character sitting in the junkyard, and that became the set piece at the end of, we called it the Gauntlet.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Rodney and Fender are doing their ice skating bit on the ball bearings that are rolling out, like when they first meet and Rodney or Fender tries to steal his foot. There's this towering green building that I designed that was based on this weird water pump we found.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was things like that. And then anywhere you go, you just start noticing like interesting duct work or like rusty tin ceilings or water stains and rust stains on walls.
Yeah.
And
just how things connect to one another too. Like it's maybe things that you never thought about. You're like, oh, right, they have a screw there because this thing needs to move, and it needs to be connected at this part on it.
Broken clocks and everything. Yeah, no, you start paying attention to details that people start getting really annoyed with you for paying attention to. and then that only got worse as I started art directing and
Sure.
But robots started that decline into madness.
So how did you get the job at Blue Sky initially?
When I moved to New York, I left Pittsburgh after 3 years. My wife and I had kind of like done what we could do there. And I was, working pretty well as a freelance illustrator. And we moved to New York because it was like the place to be an illustrator.
Yeah.
And I got there and my clients stopped calling me. Like a bunch of the ones that I had work lined up with just ghosted me. And all of a sudden, I had no source of income very quickly. And so it was a rough year. I met a friend who was looking for an After Effects motion graphics artist. And I had done like a crappy portfolio video just on a whim, like taught myself from a classroom in a book. So I wound up doing After Effects animations for the better part of a year.
Oh.
And that kind of kept us afloat while I tried to get more illustration work and failed for quite a while to do so. And then
were you trying to do like magazines and things in New York?
Magazines, newspapers, things like that, mostly editorial type of work. I always wanted to do children's books and never really did it. But that was the kind of stuff I aspired to. Never too late. Never too late. It's time is not my friend. So I was doing that. And then my buddy Brandon Oldenburg, who was my roommate for 3 years in college, he called me up. He was the creative director down at Real Effects at the time. He was one of the founding guys at Real Effects in Dallas. He was hiring our buddy Limbert Fabian as another art director down there, but they had this project that they were getting started on, and Limbert couldn't make it down in time. He wasn't going to be able to move until like the week after it was done. So Brandon asked me to come down instead for a week and like play art director for a week. And I was like, well, I don't know what that is in this situation, but you think I can do it? Sure. Let's do it. That'll be fun. We'll hang out. And so I went down and we went from Dallas over to Shreveport and met William Joyce, the children's book illustrator.
Wow.
And basically the project we were working on was like a website portal for Bill's sort of narrative universe that he was building. Like all his books had some shared characters or shared ideas that he was really leaning into. And that became like the Guardians of Childhood and Rise of the Guardians and all that. That was all tied into that.
Oh, interesting.
So I had worked on, I did a few storyboards and a little bit of character design for The Man in the Moon, which was like a precursor to what became The Rise of the Guardians. Oh. And they did an animation test. And so I had done a little bit of work that Bill maybe was aware of. But this was like we were sitting down and we were just all drawing together in his style and fleshing out what this portal could be for this website. And that lasted for a week. It was a blast. It's just the most fun I'd had in like a long time because I hadn't been doing the kind of work I'd been wanting to do for a while.
Yeah.
And this was cool. It wasn't illustration, but it was cool. And then I went home, and a month later, Bill calls me up out of the blue and says, "Hey, Mike, you're in New York. I want you to fill a sketchbook. I'm going to send you a bunch of material. I want you to look at it, and I want you to fill a sketchbook full of robots that's based on, my style and on the stuff that I send you. And I want you to go up and meet my friend Chris Wedge up at Blue Sky Studios and work on this robot movie with us." And I was like, okay, and so I did.
Wow.
And then I went up and I met Chris and Jerry Davis, the producer, and I showed them the sketchbook, which was very conveniently filled with robots in Bill's style, and a very confusing, irrelevant illustration portfolio, which is all that I had. And put my best foot forward. And I really think that they hired me because of Bill's recommendation more than anything. Cause I just I wouldn't have hired me in that situation. Be like, what is this?
Well, you had all the reference, right? That you had all this robot
I had
material.
all this robot material that clearly Bill had okay, no, a little more to the right. No, he didn't do it. He didn't do any of that, but it was still it was this.
It just turned you in the right direction.
It felt like a setup, but they hired me anyway. And so, yeah, it was great. And so I worked for 6 months initially. Mm-hmm. They had the development budget up front. And so I was kind of the first one on to start drawing. And,
wow.
And we were just trying to figure out even what we were drawing, what the story moments were. The script was actively changing. Mm-hmm. It was kind of going from felt like a kind of a Hudsucker proxy, gee whiz kids, sort of thing going on. It had that vibe to it. And then it changed a lot during the course of Ice Age's production. And so I was on for 6 months, basically ran out of money. I learned a lot. I was working with Daisutsumi a little bit and met Peter DeSev and started, became friends with them and Greg Couch. And so observed what they were doing on Ice Age while I was trying to do anything useful on robots and just sketching and drawing a lot and pulling reference and just kind of absorbing the world as the story continued to develop. And, a lot of that stuff, very little of it saw the light of day, but I did get to do a few moment paintings of Rodney being chased by building security, which is a literal building that gets up and chases him through the city as he's on his whirligig that he's flying on. And, there was a big showcase of technology with Big Weld's new gizmos. And, there's all these things totally, the story changed completely, but it was just setting the tone of what the city could feel like. Mm-hmm. And Bill was also doing drawings. And so I would be riffing off of stuff that he was doing as production designer and just kind of expanding on that and exploring other little avenues and what does the poor neighborhood look like versus the rich neighborhood and the hotel and these different set pieces.
Chop shop.
got to the chop shop eventually. Yeah. And it was that for those first 6 months, and then budget ran out, and then they let me go. They called me back a week later. Dice had recommended me for some matte paintings because they were running out of time to do background renders. And so I painted
on Ice Age.
So I actually painted 3 matte paintings for Ice Age over a long weekend.
Oh, wow. And, for the first Ice Age.
For the first Ice Age, which wound up being my first film credit.
Wow.
Yeah. And then
so you have literally you started at Blue Sky when Blue Sky started. I mean, other than Bunny.
I snuck under the I snuck in on Ice Age. Nobody gets a credit for 6 days of work. That was a kindness. They were doing me a solid since they hopefully like what I was doing at the time on robots. Full immersion experience, sort of trial by fire.
It's the best.
You quickly learn what you don't know, and then you try to pick it up as quickly as possible. And I did a lot of commercial storyboards and, of course, illustrations. So, as a good conceptual thinker, from you read an article and you try to break it down into allegory, visual metaphor, whatever. And again, communicate a story in a single image, and then apply that to you've got a script now, and you're breaking down scenes and sequences, and you start thinking about, the emotion of a certain scene, or what the tone or color might be, and try to, make it exciting and try to sell the movie. That was something that was totally disconnected from what I did, but thinking in terms of cinema and film and aspect ratios and all that, it was just getting into the specifics.
Yeah. And character.
Absolutely. And character was harder for me because that was not my characters, my illustrations were secondary. and they were all usually anonymous, like, you know, and so like getting into specific characters and acting through posing and expression and all that, it was all stuff I'd studied, and all my artists that I admired, like Peter DeSev, Carter Goodrich, you know, like masters of that stuff. But it never worked into my personal illustration work because it wasn't relevant to the articles that I was doing or the style that I was doing at the time. So there was a lot of learning, a lot of like picking up different ways to approach image making. And then,
and now your personal style is a lot of characters.
A lot of that.
It's a lot of,
it's true.
Through the eyes of the character. And,
you
know, even the pantomime stuff, it's a lot of character building, and there's, you know, so much is happening in just that frame. You're telling a whole story in one image.
Trying. In as little, and it's like you're saying, like through the eyes, through the face, through the expression, the subtlety. It's something that I definitely connect with as I'm drawing, just off the cuff. You know, that's the sort of thing that I want to get better at. Like I want to, you know, I want you to feel empathy or connect with, you know, this character, or like it's that get lost in your eyes for just a little too long sort of vibe, you know, but in
the windows, the eyes are the windows to the soul. It does feel that way in your illustrations. It's beautiful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's so I had that year off. And Ice Age got made. They laid off like almost the entire studio except for about 30 people because Fox didn't think Ice Age was going to make any money. And then February, 1 month before Ice Age came out, I think they had a good screening, and like the crowd reaction was like, shocking. You know, it was really, really good. And they called me back. And I said, hey, you know, we don't know. We don't have a green light, but just in case we get robots going again, you want to come back? And I was like, let's do it. I was doing a ton of storyboard work at that time. Actually, one of the things that I got, one of Alex Levinson's girlfriend at the time knew a storyboard rep that she hooked me up with. And then, so I was getting like all kinds of storyboard work that year and a little bit of illustration work, but mostly commercial storyboards. So I was doing a lot of that. And then, so when I went back to Blue Sky, I was basically like doing 40 to 50 hours on robots and then going home and doing another like 30 to 40 hours of storyboards every week. And that went on for like a year and a half or longer.
And those are two jobs that are complementary too.
They're very complementary. Yeah. And I had started doing more color because like I learned a lot from Dice, and I learned, I didn't paint digitally before Blue Sky. So I learned that a lot of that in that first 6 months. And then I kind of honed it and like adapted it to my personal work, which was more acrylic based. My traditional work was acrylic based. And so I wanted my digital work to have a similar feel. And my initial paintings I hated because they were like, kind of like had that shiny digital glossy look. Right. And
you
so
needed the grit.
I needed the grit. I needed the grit. And so I was figuring out ways to do that with basic Photoshop brushes and stuff. And so I started applying that to my storyboards too. So my storyboards, they weren't like, I wouldn't say they were color keys, but they were little color lighting studies that nobody else was really doing. So I was getting a ton of work. And this was during 9/11. And according to my storyboard rep, I was one of his few artists who stayed busy through all that. Because I think because of the kind of work that I was doing, and it was so distinct from everybody else. That was really cool, and it was very educational. Like I mean, and storyboards make you draw fast, and so like it was just good training, and so I've always been very quick at like sketching and iterating ideas and stuff, and that's been very helpful.
I'm sure it was very affirming too to hear that after the fact. Like you're getting a lot of work. You're like, I am. I'm safe.
Ironic part is I really disliked doing commercial storyboards because they're just it's just all about selling stuff. And so
for actual commercials.
Commercials. And some of them got made. And that's always kind of like a little thrill when you're watching TV and like, why do I know this? You know, it's like, and then you go back and like, oh yeah, that was my drawing. That beagle was sticking its head out of the car and whatever. You know, it's like, you notice the shot order and okay, that's cool. But it's a weird thing, and it's very dry. It's very quick, and so it's over fast. But it's just a relentless sort of job. And so you know, I kept doing it for a while, and then eventually, kind of like I got so busy at work, especially once I started art directing, that I finally stopped illustrating and doing storyboards.
So what was that transition then from being a designer on robots to becoming the art director on Ice Age?
The first thing that I was asked to art direct was No Time for Nuts, which was a scratch short where he finds a time machine and goes through all the eras in 60 seconds or less. I had wrapped up Ice Age 2. I was one of the main set designers on Ice Age 2. Daniel Lopez Munoz was the other. And we had like Kyle McNaughton and Craig Grasso and a couple of other people came and went on set design. But Dan and I were kind of the mainstays throughout the whole production. And at the end of it, Dan was heading off to Pixar, and Tom Cardone had put my name forward to art direct a short for the Ice Age 2 DVD. And I really didn't want to do that. Like I was a designer, I was an illustrator, I was a drawer. Like I'm not an art director. I don't want to be a boss. I don't, and I don't want to do anything that's going to take me away from making art. And I had a very distinct idea of who I was as an artist. And I had a very strong idea of what an art director was, because I had watched, how Tom and Steve had operated. And I saw how many meetings I had to go to and how little actual artwork they got to do. And I just didn't want to do that. But Tom, he knew better, and he had seen me hanging with the different departments, and like I always paid attention to how the art, interfaced and interacted with the other teams. And so he suggested it to me, and he said, "Look, it'll be over in 5 or 6 months, and then if you hate it, you can stop and go back to designing." So I said, "All right," and then I did, and I really did grow to like it. And we had such a small team. I wound up having to do a lot of artwork anyway, because it was like me and Nash Dunnigan were the designers on it, and then Vincent and Peter Nguyen were the color artists. So it was really just the four of us, like, designed and colored everything.
Best of both worlds.
It was it was absolutely. And I did my first color script on that. And then again, like I followed all the artwork from beginning to end, worked really closely with Kirk Garfield, who was the VFX soup or CG soup on it. It was such an educational experience. And there were so many effects in it, because the time machine had these it was sort of like Ghostbusters, energy beams and coils and whips and stuff. And that we developed like a shape language for that. And, so it was just like learning that and helping design that. And it was just a blast. And then it was also a very, very clean production. Chris Renaud was one of the directors. Chris and Mike Thurmeyer directed it, but Chris Renaud had storyboarded the whole thing. It was his idea. And so he knew exactly what he wanted. And they had already cut it down to like a tight, 6 minutes. And so it was a done, finished, locked cut pretty much.
Oh, that never happens.
So never happens. And so this was my first time. I was like, this is great.
Everything's so organized.
We get to plan and make everything in order. And, it was like a ton of matte paintings, because there was like a lot of sets that we couldn't afford to do and didn't have time for. So we painted a lot of backgrounds. That was fun. Painting Michelangelo's David was not fun. Vincent.
Oh, wow.
So we bought a off the shelf model, because we were like, well, we're not sculpting the David. And then we got the model, and it was so bad. And then Heather Shepard, she had to remodel it and rebuild it as best she could. And then Vincent used that as the basis to like paint over it. So like when you see David, it's like a few hands went into that, but ultimately it's a matte painting.
Wow. And
a lot of the backgrounds behind the single shot, the flash time sequence where he's zapping through in just one shot. A lot of those are painted. But yeah, so it was cool. It was cool.
That's
so I
so
did
cool.
That. Yeah.
And that was your foray.
That was my first art direction gig.
Wow.
And then a year later, they asked me to art direct Ice Age 3.
Right.
And
Dawn of the Dinosaurs.
Dawn of the Dinosaurs. Yeah.
Which that one's interesting, because you're, in the second one too, but in the third one, you're being introduced to all these new characters that have to now live in the Ice Age world.
Yeah.
And then also technology has advanced since the first Ice Age movie a bit.
So the interesting thing with that is we had a huge leap in technology between Ice Age 1 and 2.
Oh, okay. Between 1 and 2.
Because on Ice Age 1, there was no fur technology. It was all cards. So all the fur, I mean, you can see it, like all the fur are like little sushi grass cards that blow in the wind. So we had Eric Maurer developed like a voxel-based fur system, and that was applied to all the characters on Ice Age 2. So they really honed it on that, and then continued to hone it on Horton. And so all of the leads that carried over from Ice Age 2 into Ice Age 3 were ready to go. Like the technology hadn't changed from that standpoint.
Oh, cool.
But we did have like Buck was a new character, a new mammal.
Yeah.
And the possums were already there. They were from Ice Age 2.
Scrat, the female Scrat.
Scratay.
Scratay.
Yes, Scratay. And so,
The dinosaurs.
And then the dinosaurs. They were interesting because we had a couple of dino fish in like Cretaceous, and I forget the other one's name, in Ice Age 2 that like thawed out of the ice. But they weren't scaly. They were more like, whale or dolphin with some scales, but they had more like hard, shell sort of things that were smoother and like armor plating, And so we designed the dinosaurs and we started thinking about like, I wanted to treat the scales like mosaics in terms of color. And we started talking with Keith Stitchway, who came over from Pixar and joined the texturing surfacing team, materials team. And he devised this tool that propagated spheres over the whole model of, say, T-Rex Mom. We developed this on T-Rex Mom. And where those spheres intersected with each other and intersected with the surface of Mama T-Rex's model, that intersection was a scale.
Oh, wow. And
so it was all propagated across the entire thing. And you had control over how the scales flowed, and they could guide them through the tools that they had set up so that it could like define cheek ridges or radiate around eyelids.
And that was editable sockets. Too. So
it was like editable.
Wow.
And because it was procedural, they also had like per scale color control. So none of it was hand painted. They eventually created hand painted maps to guide the colors and whatnot, so you could get specific patterns. But it was all based on procedures. But the other thing that was nice is that the textures scaled nicely in terms of like distance to camera, because they were based on these little vectors of intersection. They weren't just hand painted maps. So when you get in close, you've got detail.
Wow. Yeah. So when you're working on that, you're helping tie down the design of the actual dinosaurs, and then you're also going all the way to, like you said, you work with all these departments. So the textures, even all that, the fine detail of the color of the scales of T-Rex Mom, you're working with that team as well as the team that's designing her eye shape initially.
Correct. Yeah. It's so I've got artists that are doing iterations of painting, and we're finding what feels good and getting approval in the paint from the directors. And meanwhile, the surfacing team is doing experiments based on those early iterations, and then we're going over is like, does this work? What do you want me to change? Like they're talking way over my head, but they can ask me questions that I can say, no, I'd like to get the scales around the eyelids should be smaller, and they should get more pronounced along the cheek ridges, or it's like getting specific about stuff like that, so they can tune the tools that they're developing and then the techniques that they use, and then that. We did that for T-Rex Mom, and then that logic could be then applied to all of the other dinosaurs in various ways, because they're all different. Like Triceratops has a different type of scale than the T-Rex, or like Brachiosaurus, a lot of more like elephant skin in places, but it's like scales mixed with elephant skin. And like, how do you do that transition from the more wrinkly to the scaly? And so
each
one had its own little challenge. But
were you looking at Jurassic Park and also like
but some of that was like almost looking at like, okay, this is what we want to avoid. Like if it starts feeling if it starts feeling like Jurassic Park, then it's going to take us out because it's going to feel too real. Yeah, and that's going to feel strange with cartoony, like Peter's characters are stylized. The dinos are anthropomorphized; they don't speak, but they still act with their eyes, and so the eyes are still very emotive, and so. You don't want realism with that. You want to find that what's that sweet spot that feels like it marries properly.
Yeah. If Rudy looked too real, it would be a little too terrifying.
It was already like where we landed was pretty terrifying.
It's pretty terrifying.
So it was I mean, if we'd gone any further, it'd been like PG-13, because he was like bloodied and gashes. And, he was a mess.
It's a cool design though.
He's amazing design. Yeah. And he wasn't always albino. There was a version where he was more of like a Payne's gray, like darker look. And then somebody had the suggestion that, what if he's albino? Because then basically because he was Buck's white whale.
Right.
He was Moby Dick.
Yes.
And so we flipped that, and then all of a sudden, all right, yeah, that's it. Done. And and then that inspired other sequences in the whole film because we had a whole sequence. It was sort of like Captain Ahab and the whale off in the sea.
Yeah.
And
I love
the
it.
big operatic scene. And
With the clouds and everything. And then he comes out as a cloud.
Yeah.
And it's like white, and then he's white, and the red eyes. And it's awesome.
That was fun.
So
I actually
cool.
got to paint on those. I did the first pass.
Oh, really?
Tony Mackie did the storyboards for it, and then I did color studies of it because we were like looking at Samurai Jack and the magic flute, and all these other touchstones of like what feels dramatic and operatic and like
epic,
and then
that's later.
That's later, but and then boiling it down to like how theatrical can we push this because it's still going to be a photographic render, and so my paintings were a little more it's like pushed beyond what we could do, but then it got refined to what the shots were, and we still colored it very similar. Mike Lee did the color keys and then made them work like in camera, to the shots, and then lighting, knocked it out of the park and
so cool.
Yeah, it was
you
really
guys
cool.
did an amazing job.
It was my favorite.
Awesome.
It's such a fun sequence to work on. Yeah, thank you. So that was a real trial by fire, that movie, because I was like always behind the 8 ball, always reacting to problems that would come up because I didn't know.
This was your first time
doing it?
This was my first time doing it. On a feature.
And it was total chaos and, not doing anything in order. Right. And, like big third act rewrite at the last minute. And all it was just, it was me just trying to catch up like the whole time.
Yeah. Was there any work that you had to do on any of like the original characters like Manny, Diego, or Sid as you went on? Because you also did Collision Course also, right?
Yeah.
And that is an even further jump into the future.
That's true. That's true.
So was there things that you refined as it went on?
I think there were under the hood like rig updates.
Okay.
But I wasn't
sure if maybe shapes got more rounded or more, that type of stuff.
No, we never really messed with the characters too much. Unless they did something in Ice Age 4 I'm not aware of when I wasn't looking, but because I didn't work on that one.
That's kind of cool though that it kept consistent the whole time.
And that was the beauty of like CGI Studio. Like the blessing and the curse was like it had old roots, right?
Right.
And when they changed things under the hood, it was incremental, and they were careful not to break what worked before, and so there was a lot of continuity over the years of those characters, right up until the end. We didn't have to read. Like I think Scrat did get like a rig update at some point.
Sure.
And but the fur was still the same fur. Like the characters always looked the same, which is so nice. And then we did have to redo Scrat completely for Scrat Tales because we had switched to Render Man.
Oh,
yeah. I thought they did actually a great job of preserving Scrat's look. It looks a little bit different, but mostly in how hot the light gets on his fur. But his shape and form and all that looks identical.
Pretty much the same. Yeah. So after that was your first experience art directing. Was the next one?
The next one was Epic.
Epic, right?
I got back from color timing Ice Age 3.
Yeah.
And they immediately said, "Hey, we're doing a pitch for Ice Age 4. Come on, help us put it together." And I just wanted to cry. I did 5 weeks putting that pitch together. Did a few paintings. Bob McKenzie helped me out. Peter had done a ton of character work. Ron DeFelice also helped paint. And in 5 weeks, we put together a pitch deck of presentation images. And then I just went on vacation for a while.
Sure.
And just tried to stay off the radar.
It's a long time to be in the Ice Age.
I was in the Ice Age world for quite a while.
A short and then a feature.
Yeah.
And then,
with a little Horton in the between. But yeah, it was a lot. And I was ready for a break. And then Chris asked me to come on as art director on Epic. And so, I mean, I had such a good time with Chris on Robots and with Greg and the whole team. And so now in this one, Bill Joyce and Greg were going to co-production design because this was based on Leafman, which was a book that Bill had created. And then Chris had been working with Bill on just like opening up that book into like the Lord of the Rings of the Leafmen. It was a much bigger story and all these battles and it's a great war between the Leafmen and the Boggins and the forces of life and the forces of decay. And it had gone through many, many iterations for years. And so finally, when it finally got greenlit, and it was very difficult to get a green light, it had solidified, and not to the point that like No Time for Nuts had, but like we had a structure that like didn't change a whole lot once we got
that's
going.
Nice.
So we had little bits and pieces, sure, would like get swapped in and out in a few scenes here and there. But in terms of like beginning and end and middle and kind of mostly where they were going, we had the framework that we were able to plan for, because Chris, this was going to be like a movie Blue Sky hadn't done before, like in terms of complexity, scope, and scale. You've got, he wanted to treat it very naturalistically. So we were going for very caricatured characters, but still a very somewhat more tactile real world, because his goal was he wanted kids to be able to go into the forest, into their backwoods, and look around like the dying tree or the hole in the wall or whatever, and imagine like you hear a noise and like, is that a leaf man like flying by on a bird, or its grackles are cawing, and the boggans are out there and they're going to come and like kill off the forest. And so he really wanted to engage kids' imagination and create a believable forest. Get as close as we could. And again, I hesitate to say realistic, but naturalistic, and that there's like a visual logic that feels organic and natural, and that we created that, and then also had Bomba's house and the human world juxtaposed against it. So it was always going to be really ambitious. So being able to plan was really, really important. And we had, they'd also iterated so much in that early development phase that they had like kind of like, all right, well, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this. We're not going to. So there was also this sense of like what we knew the studio didn't want us to do, what they didn't like. So the challenge was finding what, basically what would work for the story, make us happy. And
also the studio was happy.
And also the studio would buy off.
Yeah. It's really interesting because Epic, as the art director, they're in like a microscopic world, not microscopic, small world.
Small. Basically they're 2 inches tall.
So they're 2 inches tall. And then you're also having to figure out what the lighting is going to look like on these characters. Flying through the air, doing it, and what that looks like, coming through the trees, through the leaves in the trees. And was there a lot of walking outside of the Blue Sky campus there, looking up?
We took there was a lot of that. We took trips to Pound Ridge. There was I forget the name of the place, but basically this menagerie of these grounds that were highly cultivated, and all these like trees from all over the world, and it's just beautiful the grounds with us. Even had animals and llamas and stuff walking around. It was really pretty. We took a lot of photo reference around there. They had a lily pond and all these a lot of stuff that related to the film. And then Pound Ridge is a preserve, a nature preserve that we went up and wandered around there and like just crawled around in the muck and under the bushes and found like a field of ferns that we based the opening scene on, and so we did a ton of that.
So when somebody walks up to you, you're like, "Sir, what are you doing?" You're like, "I swear it's research for a movie. It's
I'm making a movie, sir.
I'm making a movie." Like, I'm crawling under this bush.
You come home with like burrs all over yourself, mosquito bites, and but it was so much fun. Like the antithesis of robots, in terms of subject matter. Still a lot of mechanical stuff in it, but it was.
But everything's naturalistic.
Everything's naturalistic, and then Bomba's house was this like inorganic compound filled with like old technology and stuff that he'd collected, and a lot of jars and specimens, and he has this security room where he's got cameras hooked up all throughout the forest to try to like record proof that the leaf men exist, and they're all hooked up to this cobbled together security wall of monitors, and none of the technology matches, and it's all duct tape and bubble gum holding it together. So you just get the sense of this. The house was basically like a stand-in for Bomba's mindset. It was an extension of him. And it was this weird place that Mary Catherine's coming home to. And she, she's been estranged from him, and she feels out of place in this home. It's not welcoming. It's just kind of weird and a little creepy, a little, and cluttered with stuff. And then playing with the light in there, so we had rules for the lighting for the human characters, and then different rules for the leaf men. And so one of the things that we did, with the color, for instance, if you're looking at the forest through the human's eyes, you have more atmospheric perspective, more blue, like piling up in the greens, and the greens all feel cooler. When you're a leaf man, the greens are far more saturated, even on an overcast day. The greens are much richer, much more saturated. And when sunlight does break through, the leaf men are basically standing on the reflector for that intense sunlight. So you really feel the bounce and the glow and the bloom and the warmth coming through, transmitting through the leaves. So the leaves, we always tried to play up a lot warmer when you were with the leaf men.
Right.
So it always had a different temperature. It always had a different intensity. The shadows are sharper for the leaf men because you're shooting, tiny lenses with tiny people and all, And
what a cool premise. That's
it
awesome.
It was, and you're just observing, really.
Yeah.
But now you're trying to make sense of it. And how does that relate to the story?
How do you tie it in emotionally?
Yeah. And then it also, we used, I chose basically the blue glow of the monitors as kind of a thematic color for Bomba's isolation from MK, from Mary Catherine. And so that blue in the forest also kind of related to that. And so it's like, okay, this chill, like the human disconnection from nature and the relationship between Mary Catherine and Bomba.
And did that color develop as the story goes on? Does a little more warmth come into the...
Well, if you watch when Bomba thinks that Mary Catherine's gone or dead or left or whatever, he's basically, the only light is a single spotlight on him and the blue glow from his security wall, like influencing the room and the temperature of the room. So it's
so when he hits the
when he hits rock bottom, like that,
we feel it color-wise.
That's all you're
too.
left with at night, So it's like this really, really dramatic treatment. And also like when he's having a connection, and we did warm, like there's a moment where they're talking and they're having a connection, and we started to underlight and get a little bit of warmth, like bouncing off the wood shelving, under Mary Catherine. You kind of start to see her glow up a little bit.
Yeah.
She's maybe not happy, but you can feel like, oh, they maybe, some, and then his Bell's alarms go off and the blue screens start to flash, and we start to introduce that, and he runs in and he's all washed in this blue color, and she's trying to keep up with him. He's like walked away from her, and now they're
and now it breaks that little bit of warmth that was starting to
so that was one of the themes that we like kind of wove into the story.
I love that. That's so cool.
So there was a lot of that, because there's this whole idea of nature is color, and nature has all the color wheel, and some of it, the richest greens, the most intense greens, were reserved just for Queen Tara. She's the life of the forest. She gets those. If you see those colors, she might not be on screen, but her power and her influence on the forest is present. And then the Boggins are desaturation. And we took that whole color wheel and just sucked, 70-80% of the color out of it, and then carved out completely any of the green part of the spectrum. So they have no access to green, and they have a lot of range of color, desaturated color in their palette if you see them by themselves. But then you put them in the context of the rich forest and they feel almost black and white.
Wow.
So it's it was really fun to play with that, set up that logic, and then kind of, whatever the story is doing, you can like dial it up, dial it down, and then play with the lighting to like, emphasize certain aspects of it, and play to the emotion and the drama of any given scene.
Wow. That's so much fun.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
It's a blast. It's the sort of stuff that, like, as an illustrator, as a painter, as whatever, but as a storyteller, it's just like the most fun to be able to kind of support what the story is doing, what the emotions are doing in that way, and kind of weave it all together.
And this is exactly the stuff that you probably watched, in the DVD extras.
Absolutely.
That's like, all the thought that goes into it.
Even tying into, like, I'm a musician, so I think in terms of like, how music swells and decrescendos and how you can play opposite. Like sometimes you can have a happy scene and have like an undercurrent of tension just in the music to really twist it. You can do the same thing with color. So, you've got the action and that's up and down. You feel the roller coaster, but the color can kind of set the tone for all of it, much like the music can. And so, I just really enjoy that aspect of it.
Playing.
Yeah. Yeah.
What instrument do you play?
Mostly guitar.
Oh, cool.
But my parents made me play piano as a kid.
You have to. It's required.
Yeah. And then like, I don't know, 7th or 8th grade. And I was like, I'm an artist, I'm not a musician. And then I went to art school and I got invited to play in a band, and I started singing and playing guitar in bands in art school. And then all of a sudden my parents were like, okay, artist.
Okay, artist.
So, and I never stopped. I played in bands, Actually, I did stop. Actually, the last band I was in ended at the end of Ice Age 2. And then I started art directing, and we all went our separate ways, and I didn't have time for it anymore.
Yeah.
And then I recorded an album again, like back in 21, but it was
It's
a
amazing.
big gap. Yeah.
During the pandemic, you were
During
like,
the pandemic, after
picking
Blue
it back
Sky
up.
closed, and after another gig fell apart, and I was like not happy, and I was
Yeah.
like got off a Zoom call. I was like, screw that. Opened up Logic and like recorded a record in 2 months.
That's awesome.
It was very cathartic. Yes.
That's so great.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
I need to put this energy somewhere.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, you do personal work, to
Yeah.
feed yourself, but sometimes it needs to be something completely different. So I'm grateful that I have another creative outlet that isn't art related.
Right.
It's like it's always married, it's always in there, but there's also something very immediate about music and playing it. Like just listening to it is very interactive, and you have a visceral feeling to it. You have a physical reaction to it. But when you're making it, it's an even different thing, because you're kind of like, you have what you hear, you have what you feel, and you have what you're thinking and hearing in your head, and it's all coming together. So like when it works, it's like, all right, it's just healing. Like it's just, there's something very, very direct about it, very immediate and tactile. And something I don't get from art. Yeah. By itself.
Music touches you more directly.
And it's in the moment.
Yes.
It's in the
exactly.
now. And especially when you're making it.
Yeah.
It's a very immediate thing. Whereas art is a process. A painting is a process. A drawing is a process. And there's something nice about just kind of like going into the zone and just continuing on a drawing. And that's its own kind of healing and catharsis. But sometimes you need something that's just like hits
more
you
instant.
and like,
Nothing more instant than music.
No.
Yeah.
So for me, that's always,
so cool.
that all ties together, in a lot of ways.
I hope you keep making music.
My problem is I can't just pick up a guitar and like strum for fun. I always have to like, if I do it for more 5 minutes, it's like I start writing. And then I don't have time. I don't have time or energy for this, so I put it down and I don't touch it.
It's not a bad habit to have.
No, but every time I do anything, I'm like so rusty, because it's like I'm just not a noodler. I have like so many people I know, like excellent, good form, good technique. Yeah, and they just pick up the guitar, they put it down, and I can't do that. Like I don't know why. I'm not wired that way.
Yeah, those people are wired different.
I know.
It's you got a lot of things going on though, so I think you're you're wired pretty good. We talked about Epic, and then was the next one Spies in Disguise?
No,
or was there? We had one in between.
Anubis.
Oh,
I worked on Anubis for a year, and Anubis had been in development long before I got involved.
Can we talk about that one?
And
I guess so.
Anubis was a learning experience. We had a lot of fun with it. It was a script that never really got there. It was based on a book by Bruce Sick. I think it was called The Anubis Tapestries. And it was a story of basically a kid who discovers he's the son of the sun god Ra, and in modern times. So cool. And his dad is an archaeologist at a museum, and then all of a sudden the gods of the underworld come and steal his dad away, and he has to go to save his dad from the underworld, the Egyptian underworld. And it's
why was this movie not made?
Yeah, no,
it sounds so cool.
The artwork. I mean, I did almost nothing on it, art wise. I was just kind of helping guide, what do we need to do for presentation images and working with. I did a lot of thumbnails and stuff, but not many drawings and paintings. And Ty Carter, Jake Panion, Greg Couch. I don't remember who else worked. Kevin Yang did a lot of work on it. They all did amazing development work on the worlds, and then Jason Sadler, Jose, Manuel Lee, Dan Seddon, I believe Enlin Huang worked on some character on it. Man, I might have been before her. Either way, there was a whole lot
crazy
of
team of talent,
crazy team of talent. And so there's a lot of beautiful pitch work, and we were really starting to gain momentum. We were thinking we were about to kick into pre-production proper, and then nope, Ice Age 5. The studio switched gears completely, shelved it, and then moved the entire team over to Ice Age 5. So we were all unhappy together. But at least we were together.
Yes, and back with old friends again.
Back with old friends. we brought back the spaceship from Ice Age 1 that Scrat discovers in the opening sequence. So the plus side, it was not my favorite Ice Age movie, but the plus side was that it was kind of a sci-fi pick. There was aspects of it that were.
It totally was.
And then we introduced the Stratazons in a cutscene. We did this whole Stratazon sequence at the end that is on the DVD, but didn't make the cut for the movie. That is, it's like Scrat Lady Barbarellas, from outer space with like giant acorn laser spears and whatnot, and
amazing.
Sandeep Menon designed this giant acorn mothership that like abducts Scrat and carries him off, and then he winds up creating a black hole which sucks everything into it.
And sets up the next movie.
Yeah, no, it's total chaos. And so there were a lot of fun aspects of it. Brought Buck back, who's he's always fun to work with.
And then there was Peaches was grown up.
Peaches was grown up and and then the gonna get married.
Boyfriend character,
end. Julian was introduced.
Yeah,
and we had every character possible in this movie. They just kept adding to the family.
Yeah.
So it would just the herd keeps getting bigger. But it was fun. Then we brought back Dino Birds, which different tech. But we tried to maintain the sort of look that we had. And by now, Blue Sky had moved from just procedures to a lot of UVs and maps, texture maps, and a little more traditional, like using substance and stuff. So everything had evolved on that level. It was fun. I mean, there was some crazy effect. And this whole plot line of them trying to divert an asteroid from crashing into the Earth with magnetic crystals launched out of a volcano.
Right.
You say the words and you're like, wow, this is okay.
I love all the Scrat in space stuff.
The Scrat in space stuff was a lot of fun.
Him going through the tube to get back.
Oh my God.
To the ship.
Yes. When he like crawls out of the butt of the spacesuit. And
all you hear is that.
It's so good. It's so good. I also love the door sequence when he gets into a fight with a door that like tries to kill him like 10 Ways from Sunday.
Sure.
Those were fun to work on.
That's the thing. You still get to make really cool art, even when you're in number 5 of the movie.
Spaceship has an acorn-shaped plunger in the bathroom.
There you go.
It's like there's just so many
what more
opportunities.
Could you need?
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. But one scene that I really loved working on and figuring out in that movie, which was a total head trip, was Buck discovers this giant obelisk with all of these pictograms on it describing the end of the times, the death of the mammals and the asteroid coming and hitting, and it's like a prophecy. And there's a moment in it where the camera, he's describing it, and the camera pushes in towards the obelisk and then just keeps going right in. And then the obelisk, the pictogram turns into a 3-dimensional sort of stage set, all made out of tablet shapes, and it's all super stylized. And then Buck walks into the middle of it and, describes what's about to happen. And just a beautiful little, sort of optical illusion, like flying in and perfect camera move, and then pulls back out and resolves on the possums outside in the Ice Age again. And it's like flawless. Like that was a lot of fun to figure out. And so many teams had to work together.
Oh yeah.
You had design, you had previs, you had layout, you had animation, and then back to layout. And then, and then lighting and comp had to like make it all work, ultimately, and fuse it all together. So it's like one shot. And
so cool.
That was cool. And then there was the 3-minute oneer where Buck sings Figaro.
Yes. Oh my God.
Down
that
the cliffside.
Is mind blowing. That whole thing.
Yeah. Josh Lieberman pitched that live, sang Figaro as he was boarding, as he was like tapping through the boards, pitching that whole scene. And then layout and animation. Layout did it as a oneer, and I think it was broken into like 3 parts that animation then like could handle.
Sure.
And then it was all stitched back together into one seamless thing. Wow. That was like the most painful render.
I can't imagine.
That was fun. So we found ways to challenge ourselves and have fun within the movie, even if we weren't.
I had never seen anything like
as
that
excited. Well,
before
we hadn't done anything like it before, so it was like,
that was very impressive.
How do we make this engaging? For it was more for us almost. Yeah.
And then he finally resolves after all that, and the whole cliff collapses.
Yeah.
There's just a statue in his honor.
He's singing with like he's got his coconut or something, and it tosses it behind him.
He's got the egg that he's saved, right?
He keeps the egg, but he tosses like a coconut or something, and it explodes for no reason, and then sets off the the landslide of the wall, which then reveals him posing, matching his pose, holding the egg. Yeah. It's just like, okay,
we love animation.
Yeah. There's no such thing as too much.
There isn't.
Yeah. If you get to too much, you just go a little further.
Yeah.
It's just,
the more the better. Just keep throwing stuff at it.
You can do a movie like Epic, and then you do a movie like Ice. It's like couldn't be more different from one another. And then after that was Spies In
Disguise. Right. And that's where we met.
Yeah.
During our brief overlap, I was only there for a few months, but I always, you made a lasting impression when I met you. I was just like, he's such a nice guy, Mike.
Well, layout has always been, I love camera. Mm-hmm. Like one of the things that when I was studying illustration, I kind of burned out. And one of the things that healed that burnout was seeing Barton Fink and kind of taking in Roger Deakins' cinematography for the first time.
Yeah.
I think that was the first film he had done with the Coen brothers. And it's still, to me, like one of the most beautiful films. It's just feels of another time, but the way, his shot choices and the lighting choices and the color, all of it. So from that point forward, like I really started paying attention to cinematography, and I don't know that it worked its way too much into my illustration work, but it certainly worked its way eventually.
Yeah,
my work changed a lot once I got to Blue Sky because I started thinking differently about the images I was making, and I wasn't doing so much editorial work. So the imagery really did change. It took on more dimension, was less cartoony, and I started really emphasizing light and form and thinking about that a lot more from the beginning, as opposed to like, trying to tack it on after. With camera, like that was always like, I would always look at shots and I would already be thinking about how we're going to light it, like as early back as previs. So even before we were done finishing designing sets, I was always thinking about where our light sources were going to be and like, how does that play with the action?
Mm-hmm. It's so cool that you had such an appreciation for what the layout department does too, because it's it's one of those departments that it's a very malleable, probably very similar to design in some ways, but you guys are also taking it all the way to the end where it looks like the final image.
The thing is like, it's the biggest similarity is that we think a lot about composition,
right?
But your compositions sometimes have to move. So you have a starting point and then an ending point, and then trying to like hold focus or hold not literal focus, but focus on what you're supposed to be looking at as the camera's moving through the scene. But you're also relying on what we gave you in terms of set.
Right.
So that was always a big thing for me, is like I really, as I started working with layout on Ice Age 3, because that was our first stereoscopic film, it really changed how I thought about how I arranged things in space.
Right.
And I was less thinking about like kind of like staging layers of compositional elements and more about things guiding your eye into the space. So it doesn't feel like a series of flats.
Yeah.
By the time we got to Spies, like I had several years of that, thinking behind me, and really wanted to like focus on like, how do we make these, architectural or organic sets really play to camera? We knew it was going to be stereo. And so that was always a factor. And then changes how you set dress and arrange things. But wanting to be able to give you guys what you needed to get good shot setups.
Yeah.
And again, thinking about lighting, and in Spies, lighting was really important because there was a lot of practical lights, a lot of monitors here and there, or windows, and like the whole Japan sequence, the light coming through the rice doors, the sliding paper doors, and all that.
With the snow and
the sodium lights outside, and the digital lights inside. It was so thinking about that really, really early, and so being part of the layout process and being embedded with you guys, with James and with Adam Coots from Story, was like the best experience, and so I just always loved that part of the process.
It was such a fun movie to work on. It was a good experience overall for everybody, it felt like.
Because it's kind of where you first get the flavor for what it's really going to be. It's like, you see the boards and you're there, but when you really start to see the fluid camera motion and the character blocking and whatnot, it's like, this is going to be fun.
Yeah. It starts to become more of a more solid blueprint of the movie. You're like, okay, I get where it's going now, And
the really fun thing with Spies was that the whole premise behind it was that we were making a spy movie,
Mm-hmm.
straight up spy movie that just happened to have the protagonist get turned into a pigeon
Right.
and derail this great spy movie. So that was great because it was gave us very, very direct focus on how we were, choreographing all of this action and the tone and the humor and all of it. So it was nice that it had such specificity
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just being another, funny spy movie or, something. Yeah, I don't know. I always like that aspect of it.
Yeah. And that's because it was a spy movie I don't know why I'm all about reference today, but I am curious. Is that like, were you looking at old Bond stuff?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we were looking at everything.
Yeah.
Like Skyfall, old, new, all of it. And Mission Impossible, and of course, and looking at those and then just seeing like where we could push shape. And so a lot of the shape language for Spies was based on the idea of stealth. And like stealth paneling from like B-2 bombers and that sort of thing, or soundproofing or baffling and that sort of thing. So it was these polygonal shapes, and that motivated kind of Lance's very strong cut triangular silhouette.
Yes.
Same with Killian, and like his helicopter and things like that. So it was introducing all of that and seeing how far we could push those graphic shapes into a film that wasn't going to be stylized like, say, Wild Robot.
Right.
Or the bad guys. It was still photographic, but we were trying to sculpt the characters to be more angular, more planar, and then light them to emphasize that, sculptural form, and to bring out the graphic from the photographic was the kind of our mission.
It's a movie where you have Will Smith playing the main character, who is only resembles Will Smith for about 10-15 minutes of
maybe 10% of the film, like 10 to 15
and then you had to design a pigeon that also looked like Will Smith.
yeah
How does one do that?
It's the eyes.
In the eyes.
It's all the eyes. They're the same.
Goes back to your art style, your personal art style. It's always in the eyes.
But really, I mean, Jason Sadler was our head of characters, and Jose Manuel Lee, he did studies of Lance expressions as human, and then did side-by-side studies of Lance as a pigeon, and just kept tweaking them until it was like, got it. It's the same. This is going to work.
And then throw a little bow tie shape on
little
his...
bow tie in his feathers, and
and there you go.
That was
Pigeon Will Smith.
Yeah, I mean the harder part was placement of the eyes.
Sure.
Like getting that to feel right.
Right.
Because we really did play up. Like pigeons can see about 270 degrees around their head. Like there's all these pigeon facts that we learned that were pretty astounding. But they kind of always get out of the way because they can see you coming from behind. And so we wanted to make sure that Lance's eyes, also felt oriented properly.
There's even a whole scene dedicated
to
it.
An entire scene dedicated. Yeah. Yeah, man. There's so much weird stuff in that movie. It's great. Will Smith's performance in it is hilarious.
Yes.
So
that's true. And Tom Holland. They both.
Tom Holland brought all the heart. I love the opening scene with little Walter and Mom.
Yeah,
yeah. That was
another late.
That was a very late edition.
Yeah, I was there when that happened. So
that
was later.
It set this tone of kindness right off the bat, and then it cuts. It gave you that yin to the yang of Walter's empathy and pacifism,
right? And
then Lance's do what it takes by myself at all costs to win. And then pitted those against each other. And it was just such a nice juxtaposition. And then just hit the theme right at the head of the movie, and then carried it through the rest of the way.
Yeah, and sets you up for exactly who those characters are going to be and how they're going to interact with each other. Yeah.
And it was fun to kind of roll back the clock on Walter's house, because the house, again, is like kind of, you see the house when his mom, is there. And it's this beautiful home. It feels warm. And then you see it later when he's kind of, just his life has become his work, and a little bit like Bamba, and but in a zanier way, in a more colorful way. And but he's alone, and we were emphasizing Bomba didn't love to be alone.
Yeah.
Walter, it's a little sadder. He's got Lovey, his
Yeah.
pigeon. There was all these little perches for her, and it's just lots of little storytelling in the set that we worked in. We always geek out on that stuff.
Yeah, that's the best stuff. Is to really, if you really like pause a frame of a movie and you look at the background, it's amazed how much of the work that you guys do is just it's how much thought goes into every single corner of every room. There's
it started with Willie Real, and then Tom Humber, kind of took it. Willie Real did the early concepts, and Tom Humber, did the designs for the film itself, and then created most of the graphics that all of Walter's crazy stuff that are pinned up and hanging and on screens and there's so much. There's a lot of again, sort of role playing, you're just trying to imagine like how this person would have done it if they'd gone off the deep end and
right,
barely holding it together.
Then after Spies in Disguise, there was a few other things going on. Nimona was kind of happening at Blue Sky.
Yeah.
And then kind of soon after that, we got the news that Blue Sky would be closing.
Right.
Which is devastating. And it's so, for all of you guys, especially who were lifers at Blue Sky, like, I can't imagine what that was like being part of that whole thing and then that going away. But I would love to know, like, when you think back on your time at Blue Sky, do you have like any favorite memories from your time at that studio?
Oh man,
any happy memories that come back?
There's so many. I mean, a lot of little things during each film. One special thing was the art department, especially in the Robots, Ice Age, Horton days, before I really got into art direction. The art department was pretty small and very, very closely knit. And during Ice Age 2, when we weren't permitted, those of us on Ice Age 2 weren't permitted to moonlight on some of the development work that was very exciting because we were a little burned out on cranking through sequences because we were trying to get the movie done in a year. We were, we wanted to just have something that was a little more fun. When we were told we couldn't do that, a bunch of us decided to do a fully illustrated comic anthology instead on our own.
Oh, wow.
And created a book called Out of Picture. And so, I think mine was 11 pages long or something like, but they were fully illustrated, like, short comic stories.
Whoa.
Like not just, pen and ink. And so we took that on and to help fight burnout. And it was way more work than if they had just let us do the moonlighting in the first place. And then that led to, it got published, and then that led to a gallery show. We made friends in Paris at a gallery who then threw an opening for us. And that led to me meeting Moebius. He came to our opening because he was friends with the gallery owner and liked our work. And, and it was we have photos of him flipping through Dice's sketchbook, and just that period of time has had ripples across the last 20 years that would never have happened if not for Blue Sky. It's not directly related to the films, but it's certainly related to our little family in the art department.
Yeah.
And there's so many other things that happened over the years, but that was that was special because that felt like it was a launch pad for a whole bunch of other things that I miss greatly, and that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And it's harder and harder to make that happen now because we just don't work with each other in person as much anymore.
Totally.
And it's not the way that the studios are going. And that was the result of just a bunch of, hungry, creative people, just wanted to do fun stuff together.
Very freshman year of college experience.
Very freshman year of college. But I would also argue the closest thing to a band that you'll get, like when a bunch of artists get together and do something together, even though we were all doing our own little stories, it was still this collective thing. It was just very fun. And so it reminded me of bands that I enjoyed playing in and just that kind of collaboration.
Yeah.
Making movies has its own similarities, you know.
Totally.
Everybody playing their own part and
Yep.
moving in one direction.
More like an orchestra.
It's sometimes, yeah,
than a
there's
band,
not
but
as
yeah.
much room for improvisation, but sometimes there is. But that, yeah, I gotta say, like that, there's lots of other great memories, but that one is like, again, it just spawned all this other amazing stuff.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask you, are there any movies, animated movies, that you've seen even before you started at Blue Sky or after, where you've, maybe more after, when you've done art direction and you look at it and you go, that is a beautifully art directed film.
Yeah. Some of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen are from Cartoon Saloon. I love Secret of Kells, but Song of the Sea just like visually made me weep. Like it was just so, it's just perfect. It was just perfect. Like all the characters and the paintings and the shape, like all of it is just exquisite. And when a movie would be less if it looked any different, that's when like that the design is inseparable from the story and from the film. And that's Secret of Kells is too. But Song of the Sea hits me in a different way, and maybe some of it's the story, but the design is a little softer. It's a little more tragic in some respects, and it's just the use of texture and color and shape is,
it's a beautiful film.
Nothing else for me comes close. Prior to that, like Sleeping Beauty was always like, Ivan Durrell. There have been many films that have built on that, but but you got to go to the source. Like for me, Sleeping Beauty is just like one of those films. Like it's transformative.
It's iconic.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah. It was nothing like Disney's other films. It affected even how they designed the characters. It was all based on tapestries and whatnot. Actually, huge influence on Nimona. But
living in the medieval world too.
Yeah, so it was like Nimona was more of like a digital tapestry, which is cool. I loved what they did with it.
Even Aurora's hair and things were those swoopy circles.
I mean, that stuff still like finds its way into my casual work and my personal. It's not in your face, but it's there.
It's like music. Yeah. It really is. It's so beautiful, and it's
little rhythms and grace notes and accents. Yeah.
Those are two great movies. Those are two great examples. Yeah.
There's a lot of great CG films too, but for me, like those are going to hit me before. I love Spider-Verse. I love the stuff that, we did at Blue Sky. I love Brave. I love Incredibles, the designer, there's so many
Incredibles. Yeah.
But,
great design too.
It's just like, well, if you boil it down, it's like,
I think everybody who worked on all those other movies would also agree with you about Sleeping Beauty. and probably even
But Song of the Sea has heart and soul. There's a coldness to Sleeping Beauty just because it is so rigid.
True.
But Song of the Sea, it feels like the magic is living in that one, and I love it.
Everyth's organic too, so it's very rounded edges and so cool. It's amazing.
Lovely.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Then I have two more questions for you. So I wanted to know if you could give advice to yourself when you had started out, when you were doing your first drawings on robots as a designer.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to that Mike?
The first thing I would probably say is, and I probably would have tried to say this to myself even before Blue Sky, is don't be afraid of bad ideas. Just get them out there. Like just get all the ideas out there. Don't cut yourself off. Work your way through the bad ideas. Don't stop before you're afraid you're going to get to them, or like I always have a tendency, even still, I'm better about it, but even still, you have the tendency to like, that's not going to work. I'm not going to do that.
Sure.
It's like just get it. Just go. If something doesn't work, then maybe don't waste your time. But if you're just trying stuff, and no harm, no foul.
Yeah.
I sat in so many story pitches, and they're just the story artists are so fearless.
Yeah.
And they just put stuff. They put themselves out there. They put drawings out there that like it's like it's crashing and burning as you're going through it, but at the same time, it's answering questions, or it's finding Okay, we've now established what we're not going to do.
Sure,
it's good.
sure.
It's still good to do that.
You're still finding a solution.
You're still finding a solution, and sometimes those things lead to good ideas.
Yeah.
And working on robots, working with Bill Joyce, it really fostered this mentality of, you throw out the worst idea, and Bill would never say it was bad. He would always say, "Oh, that's cool." And then what if we did this? And and it, like just and take even the dumbest thing and like turn it into something that's a little better, that actually becomes maybe a springboard to something good, which can turn into something great. And it's just, I was always very insecure early on, because I knew I didn't know what I was, I didn't know what I was doing. I, definitely had imposter syndrome till today, and
till currently.
Yeah. So yeah, last time I checked. And so I was this, I didn't study this. I was working with everybody. They've been working in animation and film for a long time, and everybody was aware I was a newcomer, and so it was there was always that like self-doubt, and so that I would like, it'll be okay, just do your thing, just work, just do it. Don't worry about it being bad or good. Just do it. And you're going to grow.
Yep.
You'll grow more.
It's the only way to grow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You have to fail to grow.
Yeah. And that was something that I didn't really understand at that point in my life. So that would be a big one.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Mm-hmm. I have one more question for you, sir. What do you love most about what you get to do?
I love that I work in a job that constantly gives back inspiration. That, especially now as a production designer or art director who's working with people that are working under me, I'm there to inspire them. But man, it's like in any band I was ever in, I was always surrounded by far better musicians. And that's what I want on my team. I want to be the worst guy there. I might understand how things work better, but I want much better artists with me. And so if I can inspire them, I know that'll come back to me, tenfold. And I love that interaction and the relationships that, get built.
Yeah.
Because that's something that you can take with you after the film is done, and that lasts. So I really love that, because there's something about creative people that, in my day-to-day life, I'm not always surrounded by that, and so that's one of the things I miss the most about being in a studio. Right. Is the people, and whether it's a designer or a story artist or a layout artist or a lighter, it's just constantly this engaging conversation and like building of ideas. That is so exciting and so different from when I was an illustrator. And
very solitary experience.
Very. And I had no idea. I thought that was good enough for me. Like I liked the solitary, and then I discovered that I loved the collaboration, and so that. Yeah.
So your parents were right. They said, you're a musician.
Yeah.
You are. Musicians collaborate. You're like, I'm an artist.
Yeah, they knew.
Well, thank you so much, Mike, for coming and letting me steal you away from Lightbox
My
Expo
pleasure.
A little bit.
I'm just glad I had any steam left to put some sentences
together.
You've
been all over the world, so thanks for stopping in Burbank for a minute.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks, Nick.
But yeah, thank you so much for doing this, and this was great catching up.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you all for watching this episode of Nick's Friends in Film. Please like, comment, and subscribe below, and join us next week to meet our next friend. Bye. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, man.
That's it. That's the end of it.
Awesome.
Thank you.